Now one people. Now 7 people. Nice to meet you. Today is 11 March 2023 25. I have this salad chicken, strawberry, and my salad. And this pumpkin I will eat. I have a lot of banana and I will eat it today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 banana.
Breathe in and breathe out. You must trust in the universe and its plan. Plan for you. The universe has a plan for you that will manifest positivity, health, wealth, and happiness into your life. You will step into a new life of abundance and prosperity. The universe will extend endless support to you in alignment with your highest good. Affirm to yourself now.
My actions consistently drive me towards greater wealth. I'm a master of wealth accumulation. is tuned for success and prosperity. I see endless opportunities for wealth around me. Financial freedom is my birthright. I am a dominant force in my industry.
It's very long time that I doesn't is
My wealth allows me to live a life of extraordinary luxury.
banana chocolate pudding.
I attract partnerships that multiply my wealth. Every dollar I spend returns to me tenfold. I am in perfect alignment with my billionaire destiny. My wealth is built on integrity and excellence. I am always in the right place at the right time. I leverage my assets to build lasting wealth.
6
I am unstoppable. I transform every challenge into opportunity.
7
I am the definition of success and prosperity. I'm grateful for my billionaire lifestyle. I am destined to be a billionaire. I attract wealth effortlessly. Every decision I make increases my wealth exponentially. I am deserving of billions, and I receive them now. My actions create constant prosperity. I attract billion-dollar ideas daily. I am a visionary with limitless potential. Billions flow to me from multiple sources. I am a powerhouse of innovation and wealth. My mindset is tuned to attract financial abundance. Every day, I build more wealth and influence.
ไม่สลับ
I am unstoppable in my pursuit of billions.
I love this salad because it's a lot of veggies.
I embody success and prosperity.
It has 8
I'm committed to achieving financial greatness.
and tomato.
My wealth is a tool for positive change in the world. I manifest wealth and abundance effortlessly. I'm a magnet for money. I am worthy of billions. My potential to earn is unlimited. I use my wealth to create impactful, positive change. I'm always expanding my financial empire. I'm financially indestructible. Wealth generation is my natural state. I create wealth and success out of every opportunity. I am a beacon of success and prosperity. My intuition leads me to lucrative opportunities. I'm the architect of my financial destiny. I radiate billionaire energy. Every day my wealth multiplies. I'm equipped with all I need to become a billionaire. My actions consistently drive me towards greater wealth. I'm a master of wealth accumulation.
No, I'm making my meal.
My mind is tuned for success and prosperity. I see endless opportunities for wealth around me. Financial freedom is my birthright. I am a dominant force in my industry. My wealth allows me to live a life of extraordinary luxury. I attract partnerships that multiply my wealth. Every dollar I spend returns to me tenfold. I am in perfect alignment with my billionaire destiny.
Wooden success.
My wealth is built on integrity and excellence. I am always in the right place at the right time.
Cinnamon.
I leverage my assets to build lasting wealth. I am unstoppable. I transform every challenge into opportunity.
Organic extra virgin olive oil.
I am the definition of success and prosperity. I'm grateful for my billionaire lifestyle.
And strawberry.
I am destined to be a billionaire.
Okay.
I attract wealth effortlessly. Every decision I make increases my wealth exponentially. I am deserving of billions, and I receive them now. My actions create constant prosperity. I attract billion-dollar ideas daily. I am a visionary with limitless potential.
Breathe in.
Say diet. 25 hours, everyone.
Hello, health champions. What if there was a magic pill that could help you become a better and happier you? What if this magic pill could give you your ideal body, give you more energy, less disease, better mood, better sleep. And if it even could give you more confidence and help you live longer, but not just live longer, but live longer with high quality of life, how much would you be willing to pay for such a pill? My bet is that that would be the #1 selling product in the world. They would sell trillions and trillions of dollars of that product. Of course, there is no such pill, and there never will be. There can't be, because that's not how the body works. But there is something even better, and that thing is called exercise. And that's what we're going to talk about. We really want to understand what exercise does to the body. But even though exercise can transform your life in so many ways, less than 25% of people exercise on a regular basis. And out of those people, the vast majority don't really know why they're exercising. And by that I mean they don't fully understand how critical movement is to the functioning of the body. The #1 reason people exercise is for looks. And there's two things people want to change. They want to lose weight or they want to build more muscle. Now the funny thing is that even though the #1 reason for exercise is weight loss, it doesn't really work all that well for weight loss. It can help a little bit, it can assist you in your efforts, but it's not the key factor in weight loss. Lowering insulin and changing your diet and eating more whole foods is the key factor. And of course, exercise and weightlifting works for bodybuilding if you do enough of it. And then of course, marketing comes along and reinforces this shallow understanding that it's all about weight loss. And they say that if you buy this product or this cream or this pill, then you don't even have to exercise, as if that was a goal to be able to lose weight without exercise, as if exercise wasn't a goal in itself with all the benefits that it can give you. And I've even heard people say, well, why do you exercise? You're already thin. So we want to start understanding why exercise is a goal in itself, not because it can provide some way of changing how you look. It's about how the body functions. So the first thing we need to understand is the purpose of the brain is to create and manage movement. In fact, there was a Nobel Prize winner called Roger Sperry. He got a Nobel Prize for brain research, and he said that more than 90% of the energy expenditure of the brain is used in relating the physical body in a field of gravity. In other words, as you move your body around in the physical world and have gravity working on you, acting on you at the same time, that is a very complex action that uses up the vast majority of the brain's resources. And to help illustrate that, one of my favorite examples is a little creature called the sea squirt that looks something like this. And it starts out its life looking like a tadpole, that's this little thing that's going to become a frog. It has one eye and one fin so that it can detect its environment and move around. It has an extremely simple nervous system comprising about 215 neurons or brain cells, and they're arranged in a way that's similar to a nodal cord, which is in the human embryo when we are just after conception, when our nervous system just starts forming. We have a nodal cord that is basically the precursor to the spine. And this looks remarkably similar in all creatures, from the sea squirt to the tadpole to humans to basically any other vertebrate. Anything that's going to have a spine eventually looks very, very similar at this stage. Now the difference is, in the creatures that are supposed to have a spine, this little nodal cord continues to develop into a full-blown nervous system with a spine and a spinal cord. But the sea squirt is an interesting creature in that its destiny is not to move around. It only gets this nervous system temporarily. So its job is to find a place to live, just like a tree or a rose bush. And once it finds that place, now it doesn't need to move. It doesn't need a nervous system to detect its environment and be able to move around. So as a result, it consumes its brain. And when it's done with that, it has 0 brain cells. So let's compare a few different creatures and try to get a little more grasp on this idea. So a tree, for example, has 0 brain cells and 0 synapses because it doesn't need to move around to survive. It gets its nutrition right where it's standing. But anything that needs to move around to find its food needs to have a nervous system. So there's something called a ringworm. It's a very primitive, simple creature. It's about 1 millimeter long, and it's popular to do research on because scientists can learn a whole lot about development and neurons that way. And this little worm, pretty much like the sea squirt, it has a few hundred. It has 300 brain cells. But then it has 7,000 synapses. And synapses are where neurons connect. It's where brain cells hook up with each other. So they have strings or wires so they can signal and talk to each other. And the way that we learn things is we connect different neurons to each other and we develop different patterns. And then later on, we can learn new things by creating new patterns. Another little creature most people are probably familiar with is called the fruit fly. It has around 3,000 brain cells and about 500,000 synapses. So then we take a mega leap up to the human brain, which has around 100 billion brain cells. And each human brain cell makes on average 5,000 to 10,000 connections. So the possibilities are pretty much endless. We can configure these connections almost infinitely. But on any given time, a human would have somewhere around 1,000 trillion synapses, which is about 10 to the 15th. So I've used the sea squirt a few times before as an example, and in some of those videos, I've said things that don't move don't have a brain. And I want to qualify that a little bit and say that things that are not intended to move don't need to have a brain. But because of the way I said it, a lot of people misinterpreted that, and they believe that a brain is the same thing as intelligence. So now I got about 100 harsh comments from different viewers saying things like, well, what about Stephen Hawking? Or Stephen Hawking would disagree, or are you saying that Stephen Hawking doesn't have a brain? And someone suggested that Stephen Hawking is smarter than you will ever be. And I'm not going to disagree with that in the slightest, because Stephen Hawking had a very unusual, a supreme, unique intellect. And there's theories that this unique intellect helped him survive the longest that anyone has ever had Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS, also known as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So again, the name isn't important, but what's important is that the average lifespan after diagnosis is about 5 years, and Stephen Hawking survived for 55 years. So obviously, for humans who are designed to move, for humans who are designed to go and develop and build things and find food and develop tools to get better at finding food, we need to have a brain. And if we then lose the ability to move, it doesn't mean that we don't need a brain anymore. But what we can say is that because Stephen Hawking wasn't able to move, he gradually deteriorated more and more and more over the years. And we can also safely say that he had some severe challenges in expressing his life and his health. But the biggest reason people reacted so harshly is that as a culture, we believe that the brain is the same thing as intelligence, the same thing as IQ and intelligence. We believe people reacted so harshly is that as a culture, we believe that the brain is the same thing as intelligence, the same thing as IQ. And if we say that something doesn't have a brain, we're calling that thing stupid, which is not the case at all. So we need to understand what it means to have a strong brain, and a brain that can handle everything that it's supposed to. And the thing that we call intelligence, the thing that we call focused thought, conscious thought, is about 1/1,000,000th of what the brain actually does. It processes somewhere on the order of 1 billion bits of information every second. And then our consciousness takes little snapshots of that, of about 1,000 bits per second. So I'm not saying that our intelligence resides in 1/1,000,000th of the brain, but I'm saying that the conscious part that guides our intelligence is 1/1,000,000th of our brain. We still need the whole brain to create all these pathways that we can learn things. But the conscious portion is about 1/1,000,000th. And what does the brain really do? It manages everything about you. The brain provides you strength and muscle tone, because without the brain signal feeding the muscle, it's about as strong or has about the muscle tone of a steak. Your ability to have coordination and balance is the result of the brain's orchestration of millions and millions of signals down to the millisecond to time things very, very precisely. The brain also, of course, regulates everything you don't have to think about, such as blood flow and heart rate and breath rate. But it goes even further than that, because a strong, balanced brain has the ability to turn things on and turn things off to enable a good mood and attitude. Your ability to handle stress depends on the brain's ability to turn off emergency signals when there is no emergency anymore, and to put things into a proper context. And we can go as far as to say that your overall ability to enjoy life, your ability to be happy, your capacity to perceive life depends on how strong and developed and balanced your brain is. So in a nutshell, we can say that the brain's purpose is its ability to process signals, to receive signals, to process signals, and respond to signals. And remember, like we said, that 90% of the brain's activity, 90% of those signals that the brain processes have to do with movement. So here's how we want to think about this, that we have the brain that receives signals first from the body, and then the body, the brain, sends signals back to the body. So the brain would never know what to do with the body unless the body sent massive amounts of information. So if you can touch your nose, it's because the brain is receiving information about where this finger is relative to the nose. That's hundreds of millions of bits of information, and then the brain can take that information and relate it to the changes and figure out exactly where that nose is and what the timing and speed and impact and so forth, so you don't slap yourself in the face. So the signals from the body provide the brain with a picture. It's kind of like a digital monitor, like your computer monitor or your TV. It has millions and millions of little pixels, and together all these pixels form an image that you can perceive. If there's less pixels, then the image gets blotchy or pixelated. So if the body doesn't send a correct picture to the brain, then the brain doesn't understand where the body is in relation to its environment. That's called proprioception or body awareness. But the more you move, the more you're providing information to the brain, the more you're strengthening the brain. So the purpose of a muscle is to perform work. If you go to the gym and you pump some iron, you're putting a load on the muscle. You're fulfilling the purpose of that muscle, and the muscle will grow. If you do the opposite, if you hurt your arm, you put it in a cast. Now, there are very few signals. You're not putting any load on the muscle, so the muscle shrinks. But there's also very few signals because there's no movement. So now the brain starts understanding that arm, that body part, less and less. So that is how there's a continuous exchange of signals between the brain and the body. And the absolute best way to fulfill, to keep up that signal flow is exercise. And those signals, the 90% of all the signals the brain receives through exercise is the juice that keeps the brain alive, that keeps that brain strong and functional and healthy. And through all the mechanisms we talked about here, exercise also drives something called neuroplasticity, which means the brains and the nervous system
Neuroplasticity.
and the individual neuron's ability to change, to create different connections. And this is how we learn things. By creating more synapses and new synapses, information flows differently, and we can adapt to our environment, and we can learn new things, whether it's learning to walk, or learning to drive a car, or learning sign language, or learning another language, or learning specific skills, whatever they may be. And there's no way to learn anything new without rewiring your brain, without creating new synapses. And this is called synaptogenesis, meaning we can make new connections that involve different information, different learning. But then in order for us to create these connections, they don't happen by themselves. They are fueled by different hormones. And there's two in particular. One's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and the other is called human growth hormone. And together, these act like miracle grow for these brain synapses, in that without them, you can't make any synapses. So the number one driver, the most powerful way to make more BDNF and more growth hormone is fasting and exercise, because both fasting and exercise is a challenge to the body. When we fast, when we exercise, it's related to us moving into the world and finding more food. When we're fasting, it's more important than ever that we keep our body functioning optimally, that we're really sharp so that we can function and go find that food. And the more challenging the exercise is, the more the body is responding with these hormones, the higher the incentive for the body to adapt and change and become better. So the higher the intensity, meaning high intensity interval training, for example, then you're making massive amounts of human growth hormone and BDNF. And I've just recently learned something fascinating about BDNF. It stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor, so it means it mostly comes from the brain, or that's where all of it came from, we thought, until I learned recently that muscles can also make BDNF. And here I just went, wow, it's so beautiful, because the muscles and the brain are so tightly connected in the relationship that we just talked about. So if the brain makes BDNF and needs BDNF, and then the muscles also assist in making BDNF when you exercise, then the signals from the muscles are contributing, they're supporting the brain in making new synapses and adapting and learning things better. So if you take the challenge to exercise every day for 30 days. Here are just a few of the things that you can expect. Increased angiogenesis in the brain. What does that mean? It means you develop more blood vessels. You increase and grow the number of physical blood vessels in the brain so that you can circulate more blood and support that brain at a higher level. You would improve your proprioception or your body awareness, because just like we talked about, whenever you move, you're teaching your brain something about the body, but you're also making the brain stronger and more capable at the same time. You would lengthen your telomeres, and telomeres are the little end caps of your DNA strands, and when they're longer, that makes you live longer. You can expect to improve your cholesterol health, and with that I don't mean that you're going to lower your total number of cholesterol. I mean, most likely you're going to increase the ratio between HDL and LDL. It's very likely your HDL will go up a little bit and your LDL will go down a little bit. But more importantly, even if both of them went up, you're going to change probably the size of your LDL particles would increase to become more healthy LDL cholesterol. You would probably improve your microbiome health and balance, the balance of all your 40 trillion bacteria in your gut. You would improve the number and the variety of healthy bacteria, and you would reduce the number of pathogenic and inflammatory bacteria. And in doing that, you would also affect and improve your immune function. And you can expect to improve your overall mental and physical well-being. So, if you catch what I'm saying, I am basically saying that everything is likely to get better at some level, because exercise affects virtually every physiological pathway and mechanism in some way, and it is impossible to express optimal health, optimal physiology without movement. It doesn't mean that you can't have a good long life, but it wouldn't be as good as it could have been. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love that one. And if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving.
I want to talk to you about how to think richer. It's really tough to get rich if you think like a poor person. And we all know poor people. They're all over the place. So I'm going to just show you something here. This here is a gold Rolex Daytona. The younger people have no idea what Daytona means, but this was Paul Newman's watch and all this stuff. And I own 4 Daytonas. Then you go, oh, what a waste of money. And that's what a poor person thinks. Why do I buy a $50,000 watch? Let's say that.
One of the biggest mistakes that couples make when they get married. Well, when I met Ken, I didn't want to be like my mom and dad. Dad was a school teacher and mom was a nurse. But skills, you have to have skills. And I hated it. I hated selling. But for 4 years I struggled, and I had to stay there until I became number 1. I'll sell it. I turn.
We learn from our mistakes. And the reason human beings are different than animals, we have the ability to learn from our mistakes. And the reason our school system is so screwed up and school teachers are such poor people isn't the school system. They think you can make mistakes means you're stupid. The only reason you're stupid is because you make a mistake and don't learn from it. You wasted a good mistake. Most of our school teachers, they don't want to make mistakes. They want job security. They want a pension. The trouble with that is you don't learn anything. And if you don't want to learn anything, stay a teacher or stay an employee. In America, it's called a 401k. Just stay there. Don't learn anything. But you're going to do what the two of you guys are doing, being on your own freelance and all this stuff. You're going to have to get smarter and all this stuff. And then, because I always wanted to get rich, I just didn't want work. I wanted to get rich. So I invented this product called the nylon umbilical wallet. I invented that product in school in the 1960s. We took it to the public market, and we're getting our asses kicked. Nobody said, why would somebody have a nylon wallet with Velcro? And I don't know, but we're selling it. Well, so I was traveling from Hawaii to New York City, selling J.C. Penney's and Sears and different stores. Why did everybody want a nylon wallet? So I was desperate. So out of desperation, I said, I better invent a new product. Nobody was buying my wallet, I think 100,000 wallets from Korea in my warehouse in Hawaii. So I better get my brains on. So I invented the shoe pocket. And back in the 60s, jogging or running was a hot new craze. And the question was, what does a jogger do with a key? So there was a story in the papers about this jogger went to Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. He took his key out and he put it in his front tire. And he went for his jog. And when he came back, guess what? His car was gone. And that was the question. What does a jogger do with their key? And I said, phew. So because I studied quasi-engineering at the academy, Kings Point, I designed a little thing, a hook and like this. It's one of the laces of your shoes. I designed the shoe pocket. And I went out, and guess what? I thought they're going to open with open arms. Whoa, your wallet sucked. Oh, we love your shoe pocket. No, they hated my shoe pocket too. So I spent all this money going to all these trade shows, borrowing money. I was now $200,000 in debt, borrowing money to keep alive, sold some samples from Hawaii, and we're going to these trade shows, like the sporting goods shows. Nobody would buy my wallet. So I was like, holy mackerel. So out of desperation, I'm going to buy a 4-color full page. It's so different. The world's different now. But to get a 4-color picture thing in the magazine, it was like a 4-month lead period and all this. I needed some more money. So my partners and I said, where do we get this money from? One guy's name was John, one guy's name was Stanley, my partners. And I said, well, your father has a house. Poor dad. So I went to see Rich Dad first. I went to see Rich Dad first. He told me, get out of it. He says, those aren't partners. Those are losers or thieves. You're hanging out with crooks. Rich Dad just cold the shut it. So I left my poor dad. I went to my poor dad. He second mortgaged his home. Gave me $100,000. He said, son, I'm just glad you're going for it. If you lose it, you lose it. We'll deal with that later. That was my poor dad. Great man. So I go to my 2 partners, John and Stanley's office, and I give them a check for $100,000. And I said, will this solve our problem? And they both said yes. I should have defined the problem. He took the money and ran. My father was going to lose his house. The monthly payments were taking up, but it was, again, like mistakes are how we learn. It actually motivated me to keep making more money. He still owns the house, but we paid off all that debt. It took a while, but it's one of the best lessons I ever learned. That you got to be careful who your partners are, very careful, and don't go chasing your dreams just stupidly. But it was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. I almost lost my father's home, and my father's home is now in my brother's hands. Those lessons like that are painful, but it made me smarter, sharper. After that, we built a factory. I went and renegotiated contracts because I had to get smarter. And from there, I started negotiating with the rock bands because they're too young for this. There's a band called The Police, a band called Van Halen, and there was Boy George and Culture Club, Ted Nugent. So we started taking the wallets and we started silk screening The Police or Duran Duran on the wallets and our hats and our bags. And that's how we saved the company. So I took the rock and roll products. We built rock shops at J.C. Penney's and all this, Tower Records. Out of sheer desperation, we pulled it out of the fire. So that's one of the best lessons I remember today. So when I talk to people, I say the way to freedom is via mistakes. The most important thing you can do, learn from your mistakes. Just never lie, obey the law, tell the truth, and be careful who your partners are. But those are priceless lessons. And today I was just texting Kenny McElroy. I said, I treasure my friendship with him more than anything else, because it's my friends who make me rich. Tom Wheelwright, my accountant, makes me rich. Attorneys make me rich. So you've got to have good, honest people, or you'll never be rich.
Man, that would be emotionally just so challenging, telling your father the money's gone. I mean, what do you do in that situation?
Son, I'm glad I did it. He's basically saying, I wish I had the guts to do what you're doing, so I just want to support you. And he didn't have much money, My mom and dad worked for, when President John Kennedy came to office, he had the Peace Corps, and my mom and dad are very socialists, so they joined John Kennedy's Peace Corps, making no money. And here I'm losing their house. And then my father got to be superintendent of education, so it took us about 12 years to pay it off, just $100,000. But we had to scramble for every penny we made. And that was priceless. So tell the truth, own it, learn from your mistakes. Don't hang out with crooks.
So the biggest mistake that schools make is they punish you for making mistakes. I have an EV. This is a Bentley. This is my license plate. I was a 1.9 GPA student. And my classmate called me. I went to military school. I flew for the U.S. Marine Corps. And I had to learn the language of pilots. You got to be smart to learn the language. So to get a 1.9, I was basically less than a C student. So a classmate called me and he says, "You're lying. You didn't have a 1.9, you're even lower than that." I said, "Okay, give me a break here." But the reason this is a V12, one of the fastest cars on the road, this is a Bentley. But the reason I can afford it is because I've made more mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you don't learn a damn thing. Well, that's why my poor dad was poor. PhD, who stood for poor, helpless, and desperate. He never made mistakes, and he died poor. And that's what's happening in the world today. We have millions of people my age, old guys, who haven't made mistakes. Their money's in their 401k. That's crashing right now. Our banking system's crashing. And they're still saying to their kids, go to school and don't make mistakes. Well, how in the world do you learn? A baby only learns to walk by standing up and falling down. As a pilot in the U.S. Marine Corps, I crashed 3 times. The only reason I'm alive is because every day in flight school, we had to practice crashing. We had to make mistakes in order to become a great pilots. So I went down 3 times and all this, but I'm alive because the U.S. military and the U.S. Marine Corps knows if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn a damn thing. So our school teachers are teaching kids to be poor because they tell you don't make mistakes. Remember, a baby cannot learn to walk unless it falls. You don't get on a bicycle unless you fall off. And the same as it being an entrepreneur. If you don't make mistakes, you can never learn to be an entrepreneur. Thank you.
So if you want to find out the top 3 things that school should have taught you about money, and 3 is like that, they don't teach you anything. But the top 3 things that school did not teach you about money.
Different set of rules. In this video, I'm breaking down the 3 levels of money management to paycheck survival to building real wealth. If you're stuck trading time for money, ready to learn passive income secrets, stick around. This could change how you think about money. So the money secrets of the poor, the middle class, and the wealthy are very, very different. I would know because I started on the poor side just like probably some of you. So in the very beginning, when we're all trading our time for money, I call it poor habit. You must learn to pay things like for rent and maybe your car and of course food, those kinds of things. You have to cover those expenses. And so over here on the left side, you're working 40, 50, 60, maybe even more hours per week. Some of you are even working multiple jobs just to try to be able to cover your expenses. Now that's what we call active income. In other words, you're trading your time for money. Physically have to show up somewhere to get a paycheck. These people are in the most vulnerable position because they are subject to things like inflation and savings rates. And of course, they typically don't have a lot of money left over to invest because they're just trying to tread water. This is where I started. This is where a lot of people start. Of course, the difference between poor habits and middle class habits are very slight. We're all in the exact same sandbox. We make money, we spend money, maybe we invest money, and we all pay tax. The question is, how do you do it? So the key thing here is the bank account. So the poor have a personal bank account, and inside of that bank account, all their money goes into it, and all their personal expenses come out. So just like so many of us that work butts off and work hard, all our active money goes into our personal bank accounts, and all of that covers our personal expenses, and maybe we have income left over. Most of the people in this category do not invest because they need a safety net in the event some of their active income is not consistent. So what we find here is that people have to work harder, get second jobs, and all of their money goes into the bank accounts, and of course their personal expenses take up most of their money. And then when they start to maybe make a little bit more money, what they end up doing is they start to upgrade things like their cars or go on a vacation or whatever it might be. But these people typically are just treading water. The difference between this habit and the middle class, which is the next category, is not that much. The interesting thing is that we all start right here in this category. Most of us did not come from a lot of money. If you want to learn how to get rich, you got to study the habits of the rich. So the next category is the middle class, and this, of course, is the next progression for most of us. And this is exactly the progression that I went through. I started to make more money simply by working more, by working weekends, working evenings, and working a lot, but I was still working for someone else in the form of a W-2. And that, of course, was still active income, which means that I had to show up somewhere to get a paycheck. I was only as good as the hours I worked or the pay that I was getting. I was completely vulnerable to the success of that particular employer. But then a wealth manager tapped me on the shoulder. He said things, and it takes a while to get to this point. Even when I was there, I did not completely understand on what I was investing and why it was working. I was simply turning my money over to a third party. So that's the natural progression, is turning your money over to a financial planner or a wealth manager to buy things like stocks and gold and crypto and all of those things that might be available from a passive income strategy. From there, a lot of people in the middle class, a side hustle or a second business. Now, you don't necessarily have to quit your job in order to do this. A lot of people in this situation create second and third sources of income, which I highly recommend, because what you want is you want an active business that's producing passive income. So what you want is to create here a business bank account. This is pro tip number one. First, when you start making money, you turn it over to a wealth manager and you don't really know what they're doing with it. But second, you start to realize that the only way for you to get ahead is to create a second or third source of income through some kind of active business that produces passive income. Now, that can be as simple as buying a duplex and renting it out and having $500 to $1,000 a month in passive income, and then using the tax strategies that are available to you to be able to reduce your taxable income. Or it could be something that's a little more hands-on, like a business that actually requires people to be employed, and you're selling something. It doesn't really matter what it is, but it's active and it produces passive income, hopefully. But the key thing here is the middle class is now starting to understand that they can now open business bank accounts. And business bank accounts are very different than a personal bank account. So with a business bank account, there are business expenses that you can legally run through your business. Things like your car, or a percentage of your car, and gas going to and from, and child care expenses, and personal development. You can now start to take things that you might be paying for personally and legally run them through your business. Now, of course, you need to check on this. The tax laws are always changing. You need a qualified CPA to be able to tell you what you can and can't do. But once you have a business bank account, there's a lot of things you can do legally to run through here, which now, of course, you have another option rather than running everything through your personal bank account. So many of you are already doing this, and it might look something like this. You have lots of different kinds of active income. Maybe you have 2 or 3 jobs, and maybe you even have some passive income, and they go into your business bank accounts. And you could have 2, 3, 4 of these, and from there you have your business expenses. And over here, you of course got your home office. You have your internet, you have your gas, you have your mobile phone, you have your health insurance, your child care, your personal development expenses. These are all things that you can do to help grow your business because you're employing people, and the tax law, you'll be able to write things off. And then what happens is the passive money that comes out of these accounts goes into your personal bank account, and of course you pay your personal expenses, and then you have hopefully you're net positive here and you have more money to invest in maybe another business or maybe another piece of real estate or gold, silver, crypto, stocks. It doesn't really matter, but you now are in control because you have businesses producing income for you as opposed to you just working actively and walking in and going to a job each and every day and relying on how many hours you work or how much you make per hour or your salary or whatever it might be. And certainly you're not relying on the success of some other company that provides you that W-2 income. You're now relying on yourself. So in this particular case, you're starting to bet on yourself. You're starting to invest on yourself through starting businesses that generate passive income. Now eventually where we all can end up, and certainly this is where I ended up after I started studying the habits of the wealthy, they have a choice to work, where in the other 2 categories, the poor and the middle class, they have to work. But what I've realized from the wealthy is that most people work 20 to 30 hours a week because they have the ability to do that. They're financially free at this point. So in other words, money is not a claim on their time. They use money to generate more passive income. So the strategy of the wealthy is to entirely focus on passive income. So they have multiple bank accounts, as many as 6, 7, 8. I personally have over 10 different businesses that provide passive income each and every month. I also have a W-2 job, which is the company that I own, but I do take a small salary out of that company. One of these businesses, like my company, MC Companies, I actually don't even take a paycheck. I have no active income coming out of my company. What I do is I survive completely based on the passive income of the company. In other words, I take money out of MC Companies based on how it's doing, and I don't do it in the form of a paycheck. I do it in the form of passive income. Now, I do that with our construction company, with our development company. I do that with our internet company. I do that with my publishing company. I do that with kenmcraw.com. All of those different businesses all produce passive income. We have a collections company. We have subcontractor companies. We have all these different things that we have formed over time that generate passive income. And from the passive income, I take an owner distribution. It's very different. But what's interesting is after I pay all the business expenses from those companies, then I can now invest that back into more businesses or to grow my current business. Or I can just take it personally here in my own personal bank account. But like all of you, all my personal expenses, the ones that are allowable through the IRS, you got to make sure that you don't run your personal expenses through the business. You're going to want to check with a qualified CPA or your tax person to make sure that you're doing the strategy correctly. I'll give you an example. I just flew this weekend on a jet with my kids to a personal development seminar called Goal Strategies put on by the real estate guys. And I wanted my kids to set their goals for 2025. And so we did that, but I spoke there. I didn't get paid, but I actually ended up speaking there. And before that, we had our mastermind, which is the Collective Inner Circle, which of course is another one of the businesses. And so the company, the Collective Mastermind, paid for me to go, and I attended the goals retreat, and I flew back, all generated by the business. I was able to pass through most of my business expenses for that entire trip, this whole week, through the companies that I'm managing, because I had to be there as a partner to run the event. So there's all kinds of publications that say most wealthy people have at least 7 different income strategies. And of course, all those go into these different business accounts, and of course, they pay these different business expenses. The one thing I do want to point out is the poor almost has no tax strategies. I certainly did, because I was just trying to survive. The middle class has some, but of course they're turning their money generally over to a financial planner or a wealth manager, and they're now not even taking an active role in their own investing. They're turning it over to somebody else, where the wealthy is actually taking a very active role in their own investing and how things are being done. So the tax strategies really come into play. And of course, you guys all know that I started with real estate investing, and I started with a single family house. So if you're interested in the single family due diligence checklist, just click on the link here. You can have that for free. But that is one of the strategies. When you buy that house, you're going to set up a business account. You're going to rent it. You're going to have passive income, which is exactly what you want, which is going to funnel right back into being able to pay for your expenses and have enough cash flow to be financially free. There's lots of other things you can do, and these are just some of the strategies that I have. So I do have money in retirement plans. I have cash. I have stocks. I have crypto. I have gold. And of course, I have heavy in real estate, but I also have a number of businesses as well that produce passive income. The key is when one ball falls, and it will, then you have the others propping it up. That's why we like to have at least 7 income streams at all times, because not all 7 are producing at least, and it will, then you have the others propping it up. That's why we like to have at least 7 income streams at all times, because not all 7 are producing cash at all times. Sometimes they're shrinking, Sometimes they're growing, sometimes you lose a big client, sometimes the market just changes. All this really does is give you diversification and the passive income strategy that makes you not rely on that active income which comes from that paycheck, which puts you in the worst position ever. So while this might be the high watermark for a lot of you, just understand that even I started with just one paycheck from an employer, and I just started working more and more and more. So the system that I just rolled out for you is exactly what I did. It's exactly what you could do, because you're not going to be able to generate 7 incomes overnight, but you do have to learn what the market wants and what businesses that you can create, and that could be all around real estate, like how I started. But now, of course, I have real estate, I have businesses, I have gold, I have crypto, I have money in retirement, I have a lot of cash, I've got stocks, I've got all those kinds of things, and it's super confusing. This is all super confusing because now I have lots of balls in the air. But as gold goes up and down, as businesses go up and down, as real estate markets go up and down, I'm diversified, but I still have passive income coming in from all these businesses at all times. But what if I told you the biggest difference between rich and poor is not how much money they have? In this next video, I break down 5 key strategies the wealthy use to build and protect their wealth, and more importantly, how you can start to apply them today. What if I told you the real difference between rich and poor is not how much money you make, but it's how you think about money? In this video, I'm going to give you the 5 things that the rich do differently that made me change exactly how I manage my own money. Number 1, I focus on building income-producing assets. So here's the reality of it. You're either self-made rich or you're self-made poor. Those are the 2 options that you have. And what that means is that either you're the asset that actually goes to work every day and makes money from a W-2 paying job with a real paycheck that you collect from an employer, or you take the asset producing route, or option 1, you are the asset where all the money flows through you based on time work and how often you show up, or you buy assets that literally do the same thing. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to buy real estate that produces income, or businesses that produce income, or anything that produces income. In other words, it's not you, it's something else. They're literally income producing assets instead of you. What most people don't understand, that they are the income producing asset and all the money flows through them, but they literally are the vehicle for the employer that they work for that produces an income producing asset. So for example, when I want to buy a new car, asset that you are the asset where all the money flows through you based on time work and how often you show up, or you buy assets that literally do the same thing. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to buy real estate that produces income, or businesses that produce income, or anything that produces income. In other words, it's not you, it's something else. They're literally income producing assets instead of you. What most people don't understand, that they are the income producing asset and all the money flows through them, but they literally are the vehicle for the employer that they work for that produces an income producing asset. So for example, when I want to buy a new car, let's say another Ferrari for example, what I always do is I say, what asset can I buy that produces the income to pay for the Ferrari? Whereas most people just buy a Ferrari out of their savings. I would rather take that savings amount and then have that income producing asset pay for the Ferrari. So it's a big difference in the way you think. Most people save their money and then go buy assets that depreciate. I save my money and go buy assets that appreciate and also kick off passive income to pay for whatever it is that I want. That could be cars, it could be houses, it could be vacations, it doesn't really matter. There's a very big difference between the rich, the poor, and the middle class. The middle class saves money and then buys assets that depreciate. The poor generally live from paycheck to paycheck
and buy depreciating assets. The middle class generally invest in the stock market through a wealth manager or a financial planner and then save money for things like vacations and things like that. The rich take that same money and invest it into assets that produce passive income to pay for whatever they want. The second one is how you use debt to acquire wealth. So what does that mean? So first of all debt is other people's money. So as people put their money into a bank, it becomes a liability for the bank, and then the bank lends it to the rich people like myself. That's exactly how I grew my portfolio to over 10,000 apartments. And we currently have about $750 million in debt paid for over 10,000 tenants. So all of my tenants currently pay for the mortgage payments on over $750 million in debt. Once you understand that all money is debt, and then all you have to do is fix the interest rate to hedge inflation and then have other people pay it off, you can get exponentially wealthier with this strategy. And most people, what they do is they save a bunch of money and then they pay cash, or they use high interest debt that's floating. Poor people generally spend, then try to save. Rich people generally save and then look to spend. But the money that they save, they invest first into cash flowing assets. So poor people have it. They have habits like using credit cards that are over 20% that they can barely keep up on or pay off. They typically finance things like vacations and fun and clothes on credit cards, and they never ever get out of debt. That's what we consider bad debt. Good debt is debt that you use from a bank or from a life company or from a pension company to invest in an asset that somebody else pays off. And that's the biggest thing. Poor people get into debt and they pay things off. Good people get into debt and other people pay them off for them. And in addition to that, they produce cash flowing assets. The third one is around tax. Now, tax will be and always will be the number one expense of your life. Most people work until about April or May of every year to pay tax, and then only the remaining year is it actual real money back to them. Most people are paying 30-40% and even sometimes higher in tax when you add everything up. So the number one skill for every business owner and every person is to understand how can you minimize legally the amount of tax that you pay each day, each month, each year. That's the number one thing that you need to understand. And everyone can do this. So the main reason why I don't pay hardly any tax at all is because I buy real estate. So the government gives me tax incentives and tax advantages for actually building and owning rental housing for people. They give me things like bonus depreciation, cost segregation, or straight line depreciation. Those are things that I get to offset some of my income. I'll give you one great example. I can go buy a billboard in the sky for $1 million. I can finance $700,000 or $800,000 of it and put $100,000 or $200,000 down of somebody else's money, and I can get a tax break for almost the entire purchase price to offset income. That's called bonus depreciation. You can do the same thing with farm equipment or even a private jet. So there are things that the rich do to offset tax, and they will always do this. The fourth one is to understand how the legal process works. There's a lot of litigious people out there, and they always want to sue, especially these days. People are looking for a reason to sue you. So the best thing that you can do is not hold anything in your name to protect everything you own. And the rich do this each and every time they buy an asset. So they buy an asset, they put it inside of an LLC or a limited liability company, and then if they get sued, the lawyer has to sue the LLC or the company. In other words, instead of suing the person, they're suing company. That's a big difference. And then the lawyer has to pierce the corporate veil to get the assets inside of the company. If you as an individual own lots of different assets in your personal name and you get sued, then that lawyer has access to all of those things. If you put a lot of your individual assets into multiple LLCs, as you should, then you have a diversified asset strategy that's going to help you in the event you get sued at some point. In addition to that, there's even more complex structures like revocable trusts, where you can actually put your assets into other vehicles that grow tax deferred or tax free,
over a long period of time. So that's when you hear the term trust kid. That's exactly what those are. That's another form of asset protection. The fifth one is how people manage their money. So the poor basically lives paycheck to paycheck. They, of course, spend, then invest if they can. They're typically somewhat bootstrapped. They're the ones most risk to things like gas prices and inflation, rent growth, and all that kind of stuff. The second category is the middle class. Now, the middle class has been brainwashed to go to work, get a paycheck, and carve out part of that paycheck and hand it over to a financial planner or a wealth manager that manages money for you. The problem with that is that you look every quarter to see if your statement has gone up or down, and you never know, and you really have no idea exactly how that's being managed. And maybe, if you're lucky, once a year, your financial planner might reach out to you for a 30-minute or a 45-minute call just to recommend more products to you, which of course they get fees to put you in generally. That's how the middle class invests. And so what the middle class does is they work a lot more to get ahead. And they keep putting their money into things like retirement accounts and 401k plans and stock market and all those kinds of things, but they don't know why. And that's the biggest issue. There's nothing wrong with being part of the middle class, but if you don't know what to ask, then you're completely at the mercy of Wall Street and the fees and the commissions and all those things, because you don't even really know where your money is. The rich take a really active role in the way they manage their money. In other words, when I'm coming out of a deal and I have lots of cash, I'm always looking at where I'm going to put it next. I'm always focused on what I call the velocity of money. I want money to keep moving. I never want it to sit in my bank account for very long. I do like liquidity, and I do like safety, and I do like all of those things, but as long as I have it in some vehicle where it's making money and beating inflation, which is the most important thing. So when inflation went up to over 9% not long ago, anybody that has stocks or bonds or savings, let's say, in the 2, 3, 4% was actually going backwards financially. When inflation is higher than your rate of return, then you're going backwards. So the rich understand this, so that what they're trying to do is they're trying to buy cash flowing assets, number one, that produce tax benefits but are also beating inflation and, don't forget, are being paid down by someone else. So in my case, I have tenants paying down my debt, so my loan balance is going down each and every month as my tenants pay me. They pay me, I pay my mortgage, and then my loan balance goes down. I'm beating inflation because I have a nice return above the inflation number from the actual investment itself. And I'm getting tax advantages in the form of bonus depreciation, straight line depreciation, cost segregation, and those kinds of things. So the income I make, I'm actually able to offset as well. With things like depreciation, which is a non-operational expense that you get for actually supplying housing. It's not that complicated. If I can learn how to do this, you can learn how to do this. So I grew up poor, just like a lot of you, thinking that money would solve all my problems. The truth is, real wealth is not jets, cars, houses, or any of that stuff, which is exactly what I thought it was when I didn't have any money. True success starts inside. It starts with you understanding how the game is played, because the game is not changing. You're just going to be a participant or on the sideline. In this next video, I'm going to show you 4 rules that transformed my life. What is real wealth? Most people think it's money and planes and cars and houses and all of that material stuff. I can tell you that after having all of those things, that couldn't be the farthest from the truth. You got to focus on what leads to success. And everybody has a different definition of success. Focus on that after and wealth. Most people think it's money and planes and cars and houses and all of that material stuff. I can tell you that after having all of those things, that couldn't be the farthest from the truth. You got to focus on what leads to success. And everybody has a different definition of success. You got emotional, you got social, you got financial, you got occupational, you got spiritual, you got relationship success. Those are all types and different kinds of success. And depending on who you are, you value some more than the others. So while everybody looks on the internet at people that they think are successful flying around in these big jets and driving around these fancy cars, it could not be further from the truth. And just to put another burden on top of all this, you have your parents saying job security is success, or financial security is success, or a guru saying happiness or enlightenment is success, or an influencer, of course, which typically focuses on money and cars and jets and houses and all of that stuff. That's all crap. I'm going to give you 4 things that I've personally done to help shape what I believe is true success. Number 1, most people look